Right now at 6, critical evidence from the Alaska Airlines plane found scattered across a neighborhood.
Just took a walk around the block, keeping my eyes open, and saw a phone sitting face up on the side of the road over here.
Plus, what we're learning about the young passenger who witnesses say had his shirt ripped off mid-flight, then grounded for inspection. What another airline says it found when it took a closer look at the piece meant to plug a door. And we're tracking a rare blizzard warning.
It's going to be very dangerous traveling over the Cascades.
The impact in the mountains and how much snow could soon be piling up. Thanks for joining us at 6. I'm David Molko. We begin tonight with concerning new details surrounding the Boeing 737 MAX 9 and that Alaska Airlines jet that suffered a mid-flight decompression over Portland, forcing an emergency landing Friday night. Today, United Airlines announced it found some loose bolts and what it calls other installation issues while inspecting a key component of some of its MAX 9s. So let's get right to team coverage tonight. Tim Gordon is live at PDX with the latest on the grounding of the MAX 9. Alma McCarty's in the newsroom. She just talked to a passenger who was on board Alaska 1282 when that piece called a door plug blew. But first to Evan Watson live in Washington County, who talked to the man who discovered that critical part of the plane in his backyard. Evan.
David, that man is Bob Sauer, a science teacher at Catlin Gable. He says we talked right outside of his home behind me here in the Cedar Mill area. Sauer says he knew about this incident, but of course he didn't expect to find anything in his yard. He looked last night with a flashlight and saw a white object that had plunged through cedar trees. He called NTSB investigators to let them know. And they were skeptical at first, but Sauer sent photos. Then they came out and took the door plug as part of their investigation.
That wasn't there before. I bet that's what I'm looking for. And my heart did start beating a little faster at that point because I thought, oh my goodness, people have been looking for this all weekend, and it looks like it's in my backyard.
Next door to Bob, a woman found a headrest from this same Alaska Airlines flight. Just up the road, a man found a phone of one of the passengers. These discoveries just the latest revelations as investigators look to find out, how did this happen?
This wasn't even the emergency door. We're at the end of the plane, so the emergency door's right there. It was just a piece of the plane.
Days after a cabin door plug blew off during a flight out of Portland, people are finding spare parts. That cabin door plug, a headrest, and a phone, all found close to each other in southwest Portland. NTSB shared these photos of part of that door plug, which a Portland teacher found in his backyard. Next door, Diane Flaherty had yet to make the connection.
On the edge of the patio over by the fountain, I discovered this headrest. I'm like, that's weird. Where'd the dogs find a headrest?
She realized it looked just like an Alaska Airlines headrest from her latest flight. Then it clicked.
Once in a lifetime, obviously. It's just odd. It's just odd. I'm glad it was just something soft, you know, coming into my backyard versus the door.
Not too far away.
It was just right over here in the bush on the side of the road.
Sean Bates found a phone while looking for the plane's debris.
The screen wasn't locked, so when I opened it up, it had a baggage claim receipt for Alaska 1282 and flight travel plans, so I had to call the NTSB.
Bates said he was stunned he found anything.
Probably the #1 comment I get is, sure, I dropped my phone 5 feet off a table and it cracks, and this phone lands out of an airplane from 16,000 feet up and it's just fine.
The NTSB is now investigating how a chunk of the plane, a Boeing 737 MAX 9 flown by Alaska Airlines, blew out during takeoff. Pilots made an emergency landing shortly after reaching over 16,000 feet. They landed back in Portland as oxygen masks dropped to help with the depressurization. Passengers say a boy's shirt was ripped off from the force. Luckily, no one was sitting next to the door plug. The NTSB says it's not aware of any major injuries to passengers.
Okay, so there was no one seated there. There was thankfully no one seated near the window. Really? Yeah, they just said.
You know, you just think you're lucky, you know? I think that kid was lucky he didn't get sucked out of the plane. I think we're lucky that something didn't hit the roof or hit somebody.
The FAA ordered the grounding of 171 Boeing MAX 9 jets after the incident, with each plane now being individually inspected for any issues. Alaska and United are the two domestic passenger airlines that operate MAX 9 aircraft. The plug door was not an emergency exit, but part of the plane's design that could be turned into an additional emergency exit if an airline added more passengers. Gregory Feith, a former senior air safety investigator with NTSB, says investigators will check Boeing build records and Alaska maintenance records.
They're going to be looking all the way back to the time this airplane was being built to see if there is a human error or a mechanical error or a materials error.
Feith says he wants to see how quickly the FAA, airlines, and Boeing make any changes.
Fortunately, we did not have any fatalities. If this airplane had been a lot higher, 35,000 feet, we'd be talking about a different story.
Alaska Airlines had concerns about this plane prior to this incident, but kept flying it anyway. A warning light showing pressurization issues had come on 3 different times on 3 different flights. As a result, Alaska Airlines restricted this plane to not go over water long distances in case pilots needed to make an emergency landing if a warning light came on again. That's according to NTSB investigators. Now, Feith told me today, as a former investigator himself, that decision is alarming and something that needs looking into. David.
Thank you, Evan. And to his point, so many questions remain tonight, including from the 171 passengers who were on board Alaska 1282. Alma McCarty, you talked to one of them tonight who was sitting just a few rows away from that blast. Alma, what did she tell you?
Well, David, Kelly Bartlett has had a couple of days to process what happened. She was actually able to rebook that night after Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 touched back down in Portland. She tells me that was essential, getting right back on a plane right away. Although she was nervous, she said she needed that uneventful, normal flight so she didn't develop a fear of flying. Now, Bartlett was sitting in row 23, 3 rows in front of the hole in the plane. She said just a couple of minutes after they got to 10,000 feet, she heard a loud boom, a rush of wind, and the oxygen masks dropped. A scary moment for all on board, especially in those first several minutes as flight attendants checked on passengers. We've told you about a teen sitting in the aisle where the door plug broke off, whose shirt was ripped from his body. He ended up sitting next to Bartlett. She checked on him using her Notes app due to the oxygen masks and the noise.
I asked him, I said, were you sitting right next to that window? And he said yes. And I just couldn't imagine the terror of what that must have been feeling like, because I wasn't in that row and I was so scared when we heard that boom and the mask came down, and that was scary alone. So I just cannot imagine what he or his mom were going through.
Now, Bartlett explained from there the descent was as normal as it could be given the hole in the side of the plane. When they touched back down 10 to 15 minutes later, everyone cheered, grateful for the flight crew and for the pilots who kept the whole situation under control. I'll have more from Bartlett coming up tonight at 11. David?
177 passengers and crew, and we are so glad and grateful they are all okay. Thank you, Alma.
So what exactly is a door plug? You'll find them on most Boeing 737 MAX 9 jets. And whether it's a plug or an emergency exit has to do with how many seats are on the plane. There's a federal requirement that there must be enough emergency exits for passengers to evacuate within 90 seconds, even if half the exits are blocked. Some international carriers cram more than 200 seats into their MAX 9s, so they must have extra emergency exits. However, Alaska Airlines and United Airlines configure their 737 MAX 9s to have fewer than 180 seats, so they don't need those extra emergency exits. Both airlines use plugs to cover those exits. Spirit Aerosystems confirmed to the New York Times that it installed the door plugs on MAX 9s, including the one on this Alaska Airlines plane.
All right, and speaking of the investigation here, this just in, we're now expecting an update from the NTSB this evening at 8 o'clock. That is an hour later than originally reported. Meanwhile, let's check in with Tim Gordon at PDX tonight, looking into the impact of the grounding of the MAX 9 fleet on passengers. Tim?
Yeah, David, you know, the Boeing MAX 9 is flown exclusively in the United States by Alaska and United Airlines. Between them, 171 aircraft are grounded, and of course, that means cancellations across the country and here at PDX. As of this morning, Alaska Airlines announced it had canceled 140 flights today because of the MAX 9 being on the ground for inspections. That's about 20% of its flights. Here at PDX, we saw 21 canceled by Alaska and 3 canceled by United, according to aviation website FlightAware. But of course, as frustrating as that can be, the cancellations have to happen in the name of safety so these Boeing aircraft can be thoroughly inspected. We talked to several people who were flying today on other aircraft, and we found different comfort levels for air travel.
We're really happy to go down there, but my kids were really concerned about what happened. But it's just part of flying. We have to kind of take risk like in anything else, right?
It was scary, to say the least. We were a little bit scared of, not missing or not getting the flight, not being able to get the hotel again too, because we were scared that we were not going to be able to end up finding accommodations. We were just generally scared of it happening again too. So it was a little scary.
Well, that first man heading to Guadalajara, Mexico with his wife, and the second home to Phoenix, both flying Alaska, obviously on aircraft other than the MAX 9. Now, Alaska said yesterday that they hope to have their 65 MAX 9s inspected and back in operation by midweek, so a couple more days. But of course, that is a fluid situation, David, exemplified by the fact that United has found these loose bolts now, so it really remains to be seen just when this ground effort is over on these inspections. Back to you.
Yeah, all subject to change. Tim Gordon at the airport tonight. By the way, stay with KGW for the very latest on the investigation into Alaska 1282. Coming up tonight at 8, we'll be streaming that news conference from NTSB Chair Jennifer Homendy. It's live on KGW.com, the KGW app, and on KGW+. Matt?
All right, David, thanks very much. A lot going on in weather this week around the Northwest. We'll start in the Cascades, where temperatures have been rising tonight. Nearly 37 at Government Campus. See some bare pavement there. It's been raining above freezing at Willamette Pass. That's a little bit higher. And then up at about 5,100 feet at, this is Willamette Pass rather, also above freezing just barely. So temperatures going up right now, but not for long. They'll be crashing down tomorrow morning. And for that reason, a blizzard warning above 3,000 feet from 1,500 feet to 3,000 feet. There's a winter storm warning for unbelievable snow amounts, and that's combined with strong winds, and that's what creates a blizzard. So here's how it looks. Heavy snow in the Cascades. That's going to continue for the next couple of days. We're going to see several feet there by Wednesday morning. In fact, I think we're going to see upwards of 30 inches there. You see that here, 20 to 30 inches by Wednesday morning, up to 24 inches from 1,500 to 3,000 feet. That means the roads going up and over Mount Hood, any of the Cascade passes, are going to be a mess because it's going to be combined with those strong winds blowing and drifting snow. Possible valley snow or ice Friday night and Saturday morning. We could see some freezing rain and another chance of some valley snow even on Wednesday morning. That should be pretty brief. We'll have more on that in a bit. David?
It's going to be a busy week. Thank you, Matt. In your headlines this evening, Washington's 2024 legislative session is now underway. Governor Jay Inslee says his short-term priority this year is behavioral health support for those facing mental health problems, addiction, and homelessness. Now, some of the bills on the table during the short session will address transportation funding, regulating artificial intelligence, and making financial literacy a graduation requirement in K-12 schools. A traffic alert now for the St. John's Bridge. The southern connector up from Highway 30 is now closed. There's been a history of rockfalls in this area, including a slide that closed the road in 2022. So in the coming months and weeks and months, I should say, you'll see ODOT crews working on that very hillside. Drivers, you'll have to use the connector on the north side to get between Highway 30 and the span. The closure here expected to last until July. And get ready for another major disruption to MAX service through Northeast Portland beginning next Sunday through February 25th. All MAX Red Line trains will be suspended. That includes service to and from PDX. You can see it on the map there. That'll be replaced by shuttle buses from Gateway. There will also be no Blue Line service between 7th and 107th Avenues. The stops in between, including Gateway, served by shuttle buses. And Green Line service, you're affected too. It'll only run between Clackamas Town Center and Main Street, with shuttles there also running to Gateway. This 6-week closure is for continued constructions on the Better Red project.